Chapter 5 of A World in a Dewdrop. One of the flying monsters seemed to split in half all of a sudden, and that's when I realized what they were. The monsters were actually mosquitoes carrying centipedes. The mosquitoes began releasing their centipedes, which immediately fell to the earth and started chewing on all the grass and the leaves and the trees. The whiteness of the blight spread out from the centipedes' mouths as they chewed. Several centipedes fell onto the tree in which we were hiding. Swanee hopped away from them, but the branch he landed upon had the blight and broke beneath him. We fell through the branches of the trees, holding on for dear life. Swanee used his foot to catch onto the next bough down. He swung us up and hopped away as fast as he could. One of the mosquito commanders swooped over our head, aiming his mosquito stinger at us. "Get the egg," the commander cried. A swarm of mosquitoes in the sky and centipedes on the ground chased after us as Swanee leapt from tree to tree and then down to the ground. Reaching the forest floor, Swanee leapt from rock to rock and through a small stream, finally leaving our pursuit behind. We were both out of breath. Swanee more than me, obviously, as we hid behind a fallen beehive. The beehive was half whitened with the blight. The other half was decomposing right into the dirt. "This is the last honeycomb in the forest," Swanee said. "Lord Carnigan the Cruel has driven the rest away." "So," I said, "good riddance. Bees are so mean." "Don't say that," Swanee said. "Bees bring life. They pollinate all the flowers and all the trees. We wouldn't be here without the bees. Yet, more and more, they're being driven away." We both turned when we heard a small voice from a corner of the beehive, barely above a whisper. The tadpoles on Swanee's back, they got very excited. They started murmuring amongst themselves and telling us to follow that voice, follow that voice. We followed the whispered voice and found a tiny little bee larva clinging to life, shivering in the cold. He had fallen out of his hexagonal cell, and he was halfway to becoming a pupa. He was ghost white in color and looked bee-shaped but malformed. "Is he alive?" I asked. "Of course he's alive," Swanee said. "I'm afraid he's the last of his colony." I felt bad for saying that bees were mean. "Can we help him?" I asked. "We can try," Swanee said. "Come." I helped move the little bee larva into Swanee's hand. Swanee lifted him up into one of the collapsed hexagonal cells of the beehive. Thank you," the little bee larva said. "I will remember you. My name is Crane." Little Crane didn't look like he would last the night. I turned to Swanee with tears in my eyes. "Help him, Swanee, help him." Swanee nodded and put a padded hand over the edge of Crane's hexagonal cell. A golden light flowed out of Swanee's hand, and a waxy seal formed over the hexagonal cell, sheltering little Crane inside. I was stunned. I'd never seen anything like that before. How did you do that?" I asked. "There's energy in this world, John," Swanee said. "Sometimes, if our hearts are pure, we can tap into that energy." "Will he be safe in there?" I said, motioning to Crane. "He will grow into a bee soon, if we're lucky, if the blight doesn't take him, nor any of Lord Carnigan's cruel beasts." I shivered. It was getting dark outside and I was tired, but I needed answers. "I think it's time you told me what's going on, Swanee. Who is Lord Carnigan, and what is the blight, and who are those people riding the mosquitoes attacking us?" "Come," Swanee said, leading me out of the beehive. Nighttime was setting in, and it was quite dark and spooky in the forest. Far up above, there was a glowing swarm of fireflies passing over the forest, well out of the reach of the blight. The fireflies danced high in the air, illuminating us and making the egg on Swanee's back radiate light towards them. It reminded me of the butterflies in the leaves dancing at the edge of the forest, like a mirror image, but in nighttime. Swanee led me to a small twig upon which a drop of dew had formed. The droplet of water was hanging there, seemingly without a care in the world. The light from the fireflies was illuminating the dewdrop, and I could see the woods around us through the lens of the water droplet. Swanee held up a hand near the dewdrop, and a golden light flowed out of his hand once more. I gasped. Suddenly, in the water droplet, I saw more than just the woods. I saw Grandma's house and her lands in the dark forest. I saw much, much more. The forest stretched on for miles and miles and miles, and at its very end, there was a mountain range. The foremost mountain had a cliff face, down which fell a wispy waterfall, thin but long like a horse's tail. There was so much grandeur in Galicia, but there was sadness as well, because the blight was everywhere. I saw its white tendrils covering more and more of the forest, freezing the plants in place, twisting them into cruel shapes in mockery of their true nature. All this land is the kingdom of Galicia, Swanee said. Many years ago, a creature appeared. No one knows what type of beast he is, but he calls himself Lord Carnigan the Cruel. He wears armor of acorn and beetle. It was he who led the mosquito riders against us to destroy the egg. It was he who engineered the blight. All he wants is to cover the world in a sterile, frozen blight, to snuff out life and replace it with something like a plastic doll, a fake imitation of life. That is why the egg was born, the egg which now sits on my back. The Princess of Spring will use the egg to bring back greenness, to bring back the spring. She will do this at the source of all waters, the great waterfall. That is where we must go, 100 miles away. And the princess will be there at the waterfall, I asked. She'll meet us there? I hope so, Swanee said, seeming quite uncertain. You hope so, I asked. Where is this princess? Can't we bring her along with us? We can only do our own part in this great story. My part and yours is to get the egg to the source of all waters. 100 miles away, I asked. But we're so small. How can we get all the way there if this Lord Carnigan is hunting the egg? We'll need help. I think I know just the place to go. Are we going to fly? Can we ask the bees for help? Swanee shook his head sadly. All the flying creatures are under the control of Lord Carnigan the Cruel. The bees were the last good flyers in the forest, but they have been driven away, all except Little Crane. I nodded, took one last look at the world in that little droplet of water, and I went to sleep on Swanee's back, just one more little tadpole facing an uncertain future.